Welcome back everyone, time to do another Google Pixel 4a comparison, who would have guessed it? And this time we're going to go ahead and compare it to the Samsung Galaxy S10e. Now I've been saying that the Google Pixel 4a pretty much almost resembles 100% to the Samsung Galaxy S10e, which came out last year. And what's really funny about that is that they both were kind of the budget phones of that specific time, and at least from that manufacturer. Now, with the Google Pixel 4a, this is a much cheaper version of the Galaxy S10e. However, for a brand new Pixel 4a, you're getting it for about $350, where a brand new Galaxy S10e, at the time, I think it was selling for $699 or $749, something like that. It doesn't matter because it doesn't cost that anymore. You can easily pick up a Galaxy S10e for less than $400 pretty much everywhere. So I'll go ahead and find the cheapest one on Amazon and link it down in the description below so you can get it from there and help support the channel at the same exact time. Now looking on the front, I'll go ahead and start off with the Galaxy S10e since it's the older one. This one has a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 1080p and it's really not a bad panel. And with the Samsung Galaxy S10e, I always felt like that panel was pretty good. I never really hated on it. I was just really glad that Samsung didn't put a notch on it, because if they did, I would have literally cried in my sleep. But it was a pretty good designed phone, and the fact that it had, shared the same body language as the more expensive S10 and S10 Plus, that was definitely one of my favorite things about it, and I give a lot of respect for Samsung for doing that. It's a 1080p display, like I said, and it's a whole punch display, so you have very little bezel on it, which is another huge highlight of it. And overall, the phone looks really good. I think, the screen looks really good too. But the Google Pixel 4a, kind of like I said, is almost the S10e but reincarnated. It has a 5.81-inch OLED display, and this one is also 1080p. Now the pixels per inch are a little higher on the Google Pixel 4a, so kind of keep that in mind. So it's 0.01 inches bigger than the S10e, and you can tell they're almost exactly the same size. They're a little bit different, but just because they're the same size and look kind of the same doesn't mean they're the same phone at all, and I'll get into more details in literally like 2 seconds. But the Pixel 4a screen isn't really that bad. I think it's pretty good for the price that you're paying for it. The viewing angles were actually surprisingly really decent, and I don't know why I always bring that up, but that was the first thing that I noticed, and that actually kind of threw me off. And I think the phone looks really good too. Like I said, S10e, Pixel 4a almost look identical. They look almost like twins. So for sure, I'll give a thumbs up for both these panels, but I kind of think that the Samsung Galaxy S10e actually has a better looking panel. I don't know what it is. Samsung does a really good job with their panels, and I would probably give the edge to the S10e when it comes down to the panels themselves. On the bottom, USB Type-C ports on both, and both actually have headphone jacks, which is really surprising. Now, I don't know who is going to use a headphone jack now, but you have that capability on these phones, which is really cool. And on the back, you can see a single camera setup on the Pixel 4a and a dual camera setup on the Galaxy S10e. Glass back on the S10e, or on the Pixel 4a, we have a plastic back. And as I stated before, the build quality of the Google Pixel 4a is probably one of its biggest problems. And it's not a problem because, you're paying for it. You're paying a cheaper price for a cheaper phone. But when you compare it to something like an S10e, I mean, you can definitely feel the quality that the S10e is bringing. It feels like a $1,000 phone, where the Pixel 4a does actually feel like a $350 phone. Is it a bad thing? It totally depends up to you. Just the way the phone feels and everything isn't everything, but for me personally, I would rather prefer a more premium feeling phone than a phone that, may be cheaper. I'd rather spend more money on a more premium feeling phone. But just in case you can't, or just in case, you think differently, obviously the Pixel 4a is there for you. And maybe it's an acquired taste, I don't know, but some other things to keep in mind. The Samsung Galaxy S10e does have IP certification, which is a really cool thing. The Google Pixel 4a does not have it, and the Pixel 4a does not have any wireless charging, where the Samsung Galaxy S10e actually has it. So a pretty big thing to keep in mind. And another huge thing to keep in mind, the Samsung Galaxy S10e has a micro SD card slot, where the Google Pixel 4a does not have any memory card expansion at all. So is it a big deal? That's something you're going to have to ask yourself. Me personally, I would have loved to see a micro SD card slot on this phone, but I don't think Google has ever put a micro SD card slot on any of their devices, so I'm not really surprised. But that really pretty much covers it up in terms of the outside. To kind of sum up my little outside comparison, I think definitely the S10e is the better feeling and just better looking phone overall, but the 4a is the cheaper phone, and you're getting a really good quality phone for that specific price tag. Now hitting on the software lifecycle of these phones, technically speaking, I do think the Pixel 4a will outlast the S10e, but we just got news that the S10 lineup, including the future lineups of Samsung, are actually going to be gaining an extra year of support, which is going to be humongous. And I think that's going to be a really awesome thing. I literally cannot wait for that to happen. So technically speaking, the Samsung Galaxy S10e will actually end on around Android 12 as far as I know, with the Google Pixel 4a will actually probably end off, I think, on Android 13, I think that's what it was. So Android 11, Android 12, Android 13, yeah, I think around Android 13 is when the Pixel 4a is going to end, and maybe it can keep going longer or whatever, but the Pixel lineup has a really good advantage over the Samsung Galaxy S10e, and that's two things actually. One, stock Android. Pixel 4a has stock Android. S10e has the bulky, One UI, which still really isn't that bad, but it's kind of annoying. Stock Android is really good. I like it a lot more than One UI. But the other thing is, the custom ROM support. There's a huge custom ROM support for the Pixel 4a, where the S10e, I don't even think you can custom ROM like 99% of them. I think you can do them for the Exynos versions, but you can't do it for the Snapdragon versions, which is really annoying. So keep that in mind. That's a big thing to keep in mind. If you're not a custom ROMer, then it doesn't really matter. But if you're somebody who likes, modding their phones, the Pixel 4a will probably do you better in the long run. So that kind of covers it up in terms of the software. Again, to each their own. Some people might prefer One UI, but I definitely do prefer stock Android, and I think the Pixel 4a definitely wins there. Now hitting on the performance, I did a little bit of a speed test so you guys can see it too. The S10e has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 640 GPU, and two different models, 6 gigs of RAM in the base model, and then 8 gigs of RAM on the top tier model. In this case, I had the base model, where the Google Pixel 4a has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 618 GPU, and a 6 gigs of RAM, and there's only one model of it. And what I can tell you is, and from my speed test and everything, I kind of found that the S10e is an extremely fast performing phone. I never really had any problems with it. I never really, had any issues with it. But the Pixel 4a, I still think is the smoother device. And speed and everything is important too. But what would you rather have? But the smoother phone may very well be the Pixel 4a, because One UI, and even on my Samsung Galaxy S20 and my S20 Ultra, whenever I mess with them, it always seems like they glitch up a little bit. They always do some really weird things sometimes. And when you have a phone like the 4a that's stock Android, it doesn't have a lot of components running in the background. That's a huge asset for that phone, and I think that's one reason why the Pixel 4a just is so much smoother, because it has way less things running in the background. So the 4a, I think, is the smoother one overall. So hopefully that makes sense. I think if you want the smoother device, I think that's probably a better way to go, and I would rather pick up a 4a than the S10e, but the best thing is to have both, to have great performance and great smoothness, and there's some phones out there like that, but we're not talking about those right now. So performance-wise, that pretty much covers it. Hopefully that kind of broke it down for you guys. Now hitting on the cameras, a dual camera setup on the S10e, a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens, and a 16 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, where the Google Pixel 4a had that 12.2 megapixel wide-angle lens, single camera setup. And on both we can shoot 4K videos, but we are able to do 4K at 60 on the Samsung Galaxy S10e, or we're not able to do that on the Pixel 4a. And you're just going to have to ask yourself, how big of a thing is that for you? If you like doing 4K videos, if you like doing 4K at 60, then yeah, you're probably better off going with the Galaxy S10e. But I definitely do think that the Pixel 4a's camera is still good enough for the most part. Whatever you're going to do with this is going to be perfectly fine. It can take pretty good photos, and I think for sure the S10e is probably the better winner. I even think the S10e probably has the better photos as well. But again, once I do my full camera comparison, I'll go ahead and break it down for you a little bit further. So 10 megapixel sensor on the S10e on the front, 8 megapixel sensor on the Pixel 4a. You can do 4K at 60 on the S10e, only 1080p on the Pixel 4a. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the camera. Now ending it off with the battery life. The Galaxy S10e had a 3100 mAh battery, where the Pixel 4a had a 3140 mAh battery. And to be honest, I think this is weird. The Pixel 4a has the better battery life in my opinion. From what I've been testing, I think the Pixel 4a actually has pretty decent battery life. However, a big thing to keep in mind is that you do not have any wireless charging on the Pixel 4a like I stated earlier. But not only that, but you have a reverse wireless charging on the Galaxy S10e as well. So I don't know if you want the better battery life overall, probably the Pixel 4a is the better way to go. But you have that crazy capability of wireless charging, which is such a mind-boggling feature, I guess. But that reverse wireless charging, which is really cool. And you don't have that on the Pixel 4a. So that's definitely a battery feature. That's a big thing to keep in mind. But I mean, better battery life, Pixel 4a, better battery features is definitely for the S10e. Now to sum up this a comparison and to answer the question, if you had to pick one of these, which one would it be? In my opinion, I think I would still rather pick up a Samsung Galaxy S10e between both of these, and that's basically for two reasons. the better build quality, and the better cameras. I feel like the S10e actually has the better camera setup. You have that better capability of shooting 4K at 60, and even on the front camera doing 4K at 60. And I just like how the phone feels. It feels really good. You have expandable storage. You have a lot of different things, and the S10e feels like a more of a complete phone, where the Pixel 4a, it like feels like you paid, that much for that device. But that's not a bad thing either. I think the Pixel 4a is a tremendous phone. I really don't have any problems with it per se. And I think that's a really good thing about this phone. If you need to go get a brand new phone, the Pixel 4a is there for you. It's very convenient. You can go online, order it whenever it's available, and you can just move on with your day. And I think that's a huge asset for the Pixel 4a. It's definitely not the best phone. Even between these two, I don't think it's as good as the S10e, but I still think it has a lot of value. And if you're planning on getting it, I say go for it, be my guest. And there's a lot of advantages for the 4a as well. So that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.